KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Matamoros, and I'm your host for Real Men of Real Estate. Today, we're going to be talking about three terrific subjects. First of all, we're going to be talking about the top supply chain challenges shippers and carriers respond, how they respond. The second will be move to right-sizing changes, commercial real estate landscape in San Francisco. And then thirdly, will employers change your salary if you move to a cheaper area? Once again, I am your host, Paul Matamoros, with Real Men of Real Estate. I am your real estate professional today, also here in my office today, and we're sharing some great information because it's so important that people know what's going on in the commercial industry. I happen to have business going from, say, 2 states, California, specifically in San Francisco, a professional real estate there, a person, and also a commercial broker in the state of New Mexico. But today we're going to be focusing on my home city of San Francisco and what is on the horizons and what are we dealing, or the horizon, and what are we dealing with as far as commercial real estate in San Francisco? Well, with any further ado, I wanted to start this subject right now. And the top chain challenges. So many subjects in today's, say, cafes. People might be talking, what's going to happen? Why is it taking so long? But we need to investigate this a little bit more thoroughly. A lot of people did notice that during the pandemic, there was a problem, and it's only obvious. If there's not enough personnel, people are behind closed doors, being quarantined. Of course, we're not going to have those workers to move these containers. But this story here, or this information, these news bulletins that I'm going to share with you today, go even before the pandemic. So once again, the top supply chain challenges, shippers and carriers respond. So here, and this is taken from resources.coyote.com, and it mentions that the supply chain challenges you're facing today likely look very little like those you envisioned at the beginning of 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic caused chaos across every local, national, and global supply chain, from product shortages to facility closures and beyond. Yet somehow shippers and carriers around the world have persevered, and they continue to ship and deliver goods every day. But here it goes. To start off, what are the biggest challenges in today's supply chain? We asked 850 decision makers to find out. We took this opportunity to ask more than 850 of them about their biggest pain points in a supply chain automation research study. Here's what they're saying. Well, the top supply chain challenges for shippers. When we asked the businesses, and they told us that, and we're talking about the biggest shipping problems today, their top 5 responses were a mix of factors. So one, it says keeping transportation costs down. So this was even before the pandemic came. There's always been a challenge for this. Number 2, keeping up with customer industry demands. And number 3, sourcing consistent, reliable carrier capacity. And number 4, keeping up with the latest technology, solutions, and demands. This one's a big one, and I want to talk a little bit more about this. And then on-time pickup and delivery performance. Well, here it said that the biggest supply chain challenges in 2021. So it says keeping transportation costs, that was very, very high, as we see here. Out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 items here, that one was the biggest here. And so keeping up the customer industry demands, followed that, and then sourcing. But the one that I wanted to mention today was integrating technology solutions across all partners. They mentioned that one of the biggest challenges today that carriers are facing is that they are, and I'll read it from here, number 2, fast and free shipping is pressuring everybody in the supply chain. It mentions that customer demands faster or for faster, cheaper service. The so-called Amazon effect, after the expectations created and heightened by the e-tail giants' growing dominance, have intensified cost issues and stained or strained an already thin carrier supply. So once again, this is something, and not to bash or disrespect high-tech companies like Amazon, Mr. Bezos, he is at the forefront of delivering his products. Well, so much that it has put other, say, supply carriers at a breaking point almost, if we could say that, and they are faced with the challenge. Because if the biggest or one of the richest companies, Amazon, around the world has the resources to fine-tune the carrier process, how about the smaller companies? So this is one of the big challenges. Yesterday I was on communicating with my son, and he's a union plumber in San Francisco, but him and I were chatting about this, and he told me, Dad, it's not so much that that there isn't enough labor out there on the books. We have so many journeymen and so many laborers and apprentices that's not the problem. The problem that we're seeing here in San Francisco is the supply or the materials getting to the projects. And there's been a slowdown on high-rise projects, but what he shared with me is that the low-income tenant improvement projects are probably the bread and butter of now. And you could almost imagine why, right? But so just to get a perspective on this, and we're going to get into 2 other subjects on real estate in San Francisco, but just understanding where the issue lies. One, the pandemic hit, so there was a shortage of workers. And then in being in a ship, there was that problem that there were ships being backed up on these, say, ports of entry. Add to it now that we're seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel with this pandemic, still there was always this underlying issue of cost. How can we deliver product for, say, a more reasonable amount of money? And then when you mention that, you have to keep in perspective, what is the customer willing to pay? With that, you could see how Amazon really does have an edge on this. Not to get too far from this, but I remember I was doing a pitch deck for New Mexico on our commercial projects that we're proposing in the city of Rio Rancho. But I remember doing the research a couple of years back on Mr. Bezos when he spent a lot of money on, say, cargo vans and 747 cargo planes. He wanted to even reduce his cost even more because he didn't want to say, and that's business 101, right? I mean, my hat off to anyone that tries to do business right? But he wanted to reduce his costs. So he said, well, why should I pay carriers to ship my products when I could buy planes, vans, and reduce the cost? And that he did. So you could see the advantage of being a big company and still the same, we're faced with this issue. How are we going to move product from over there to here to get our projects going? And keeping in mind that Amazon, and once again, we're not disrespecting Amazon, Amazon ships their products. They are very, very good at seeing what needs to happen to keep their business going. And But the question would be for anyone else that's in business, in delivering or shipping, we have to get on board, or you have to get on board as far as technology is concerned. So that was one of the important little tidbits that I found in this, because you delve into information to really find out how can we fix the situation. And by wanting to fix the situation, we have to find out what the problem is. So COVID-19 was a huge problem for us, but now what we want to do is we want to start learning about the technology that's needed in, say, helping the supply chain situation. Not only that, but yet, our customers, that we want to make sure that we're keeping up to date with their needs. CRMs are so important. So if anything that I've gleaned from this research is that anyone in business today that is not using technology to benefit their business and to keep in constant contact automatically, with your client, you're going to be left behind. And so all we need to do now is just be patient, but keep working. Invest in your company. Start looking how the big players are taking care of their businesses, and see if we could gain a little bit information from that, so that we could apply it. And naturally, this is a big issue, bigger than any one company here. So I think the more that people get to see this as a big problem for a lot of companies, the more that people can have these roundtable meetings to see what we can do or what can be done to help with this situation. Well, fantastic. So that's what I wanted to share in this first segment with you. The supply chain, once again, it was an issue from the beginning. Then the pandemic hit, and now we're coming from this resurgence from the pandemic, but still we need to fix these things. Well, our next segment, we're going to be talking about move to right-sizing changes, commercial real estate landscape in San Francisco. So that's a new buzzword these days in the commercial real estate industry, is right-sizing. Once again, I'm Paul Matamoros with Real Men of Real Estate. I am your host, and I'd love to talk about anything real estate. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back, please.
Recording stopped. FireUp Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. FireUp Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services, including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing, and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. FireUp Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
The toughest part in the lending process is patience. Like I tell all my clients, once you get those keys in hand, it'll all be worth it.
Everything that they said they were going to do, they did. I saved so much money working with First Lending Solutions. I love my new house. I couldn't be happier.
So reach out to me at First Lending Solutions so I can help you get started.
You can contact Defina Miller with First Lending Solutions at 951-973-0123, definamillermortgage.com.
I love how New School is able to help me greatly with my career
because they actually have experience working in the field. The greatest thing about New School is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. And I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
Recording in progress.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Paul Matamoros with Real Men of Real Estate, and I am here discussing quite a few important subjects of commercial real estate, specifically in the San Francisco area, but likewise, this can give you some insight on what's happening around the world as well. My last segment, we mentioned, or we were talking about the supply chain issues. Really, it was an issue even before the pandemic hit as far as cost and what we should be doing. Anyone that is into the shipping industry, receiving materials or shipping them out, should be looking into the latest technology and looking at the big players in this. Well, this second segment, folks, we're going to be talking about move to right-sizing changes, commercial real estate landscape in San Francisco. So the buzzword right now is right sizing. And just to share a little bit about this, when it mentions move to right sizing, changes commercial real estate landscape in San Francisco, we want to understand San Francisco, like a lot of metropolitan cities, they have a lot of space in as far as commercial high-rise buildings. What was very interesting about this article here that was dated just March 2nd of 2022, just a few weeks back, and this is from the marketplace.org. It mentions that San Francisco's downtown is grappling with the shift from catering to its 9-to-5 crowd, a substantial part of which will be permanently hybrid. Well, we did hear about that now that the pandemic is coming down or subsiding a bit, and a good population, or the good majority of the population, has been vaccinated, this is something that big companies are looking at, that not so much that they're not going to use these buildings, because that would be ludicrous. That would not be good business practice. But they're going to implement a hybrid model here. So it mentions here that the buzzword in commercial real estate these days is right sizing, finding the appropriately sized, smaller usual office space for a hybrid workforce. So it mentions that maybe no US city will feel the impact of right sizing more than San Francisco, which has consistently trailed New York, Los Angeles, and Austin, Texas in weekly office attendance throughout the pandemic. Okay, and then city officials expect 15% of the city's workforce to be permanently remote. Now, this really adds to what we're talking about here. And with the Omicron now mostly in the rearview mirror, a long delayed shift to hybrid work is already reshaping the rest of the city's economy. So you can see the change in the city's financial district, where Kai Shane took this reporter on a tour of a rare site in San Francisco these days, a little less than 200,000 square feet of office space that a company actually wants. Now, why this is so, say, unusual, because remember, before, companies would go in and rent out or lease out huge amounts of space, right? And people working, there was always money coming in, especially there in a high-tech city as San Francisco. But just, it goes on to mention, just imagine this all full of real cool furniture, people enjoying hanging out. Shane said, pointing to a vacant floor in the podium of 101 California Street, a 48-story downtown skyscraper. A handful of construction workers in hard hats traipsed around the sixth-floor annex. It mentions that now companies are going to come in and they have to, say, right size the area. They were mentioning that these spots or these floors will have a mix of, say, how should we say it here? A hybrid experience begins with a dining hall, multiple lounge areas, new office way of meeting. There'll be space, not so much a specific office space that you might have, but then open space. Is this something new? There were a couple of companies that were starting to do this already for, say, college students or say people that were just starting off, entrepreneurs that really didn't have the cost to, or the funds to take care of say, an executive suite. But now we're seeing that this is something that we could start looking forward in the future so that it could constantly be in flex, I should say. You don't want anything that's, how should I say it, that is not going to be able to change with situations that might change in the environment. For instance, this pandemic. This is something that we, as a commercial broker in New Mexico, are doing, this post-COVID design component that we're adding to any of the projects that we're promoting, where you have the environment that is so important to human beings these days. And we know that we want space. A lot of people want space, but let's face it, there is something to be said about being back in an urban setting. People can meet with one another. There's times to go out and have a coffee, eat, and talk over business. It's more conducive to a workday. They did mention that in this hybrid equation that they will be incorporating, say, 2 days out of the week that people can work remotely. And that, to me, is smart, because you don't want to start, say, telling people to come to the office, and yet the office really isn't designed for everyone's need, because now that this pandemic has affected everyone, people have their certain comfort zones, right? So this is where architects as well as designers are really looking and doing the research to develop workspaces that will conform with post-COVID design. And once again, I can't help but share what we're proposing in the city of Rio Rancho, where we want to put in biophilic component. We want to have more modern office flex space, and also too that this even goes into higher end apartments. You have to keep this in mind. If there's a space where you feel like you're not so boxed in, where you can be part of nature, and this is where the biophilic component comes into play. Well, these are things that are very important in the here and now. It's something that most workers are now seeing, that they do want to meet with their colleagues, and they want to get back to that, working with their colleagues, because at home, even though it's comfortable, there are some people that, it gets to the point where we start to suffer from either depression. I'm no doctor, not saying that, far from it, but let's face it, we were made to interact with human beings. And so this is very, very important that that the designers, architects, people, the masterminds are getting together and seeing how we can get people back into these cities safely, because that's very important, and yet being productive. They did mention too that in this article, even though restaurants are missed, there's people that, working at home, think about it. You had to go in and make your food, and sometimes had to attend to children. So just as long as you got your work done, right? But that that component of being with your colleagues, that professionalism, really has been missed by quite a few of the population, or I should say a good portion of the population. And why we say this is because remember, when you're in that professional setting, there is something to be said about meeting with one of your colleagues at a restaurant to talk over some business, being on the outdoor open area, which, by the way, a lot of restaurants are looking into this, where you have these roll-up garage doors to have air go through your space, make it more healthier, that you're not breathing in just stale air. Air needs to be circulating, and what better component of air than fresh air, right? So these are things that people miss. And once again, it keeps that edge on you on how to communicate face-to-face with people. Because once again, I think a lot of the anxiety that not only adults were faced with during this pandemic, but even children, it's sad to say, are suffering through this. And because they need to be around people. I remember growing up, I needed to be around my friends and playing. And so this is something that's important. Well, with this, they said that downtown San Francisco has rallied on the 9-to-5 work population for decades now. And so we need to pivot, and we need to pivot quickly. This is important. We can't let real estate in these urban areas, San Francisco, stay stale, no longer than what's recommended. And this is why it's so important for us to pivot quickly and see what we could start to do to get some design in there, post-COVID design, to really meet the need for getting back to work. Now, the other thing is, the idea is to have emergency services, either housing or hotel units, as well as amenities. They were saying that this is the future of downtown. So in other words, not only a place to work, there are people that want a nightlife, but yet emergency service is so important, needs to be on the ready there. And this is what's going to be needed, and hotel units, right? With those components. This is the wave of the future. I think now we're going to be heading into a commercial break. I apologize, I forgot to hit my timer here, but if someone can give me a cue on the timing, how much more time do we have? But anyway, so these are the things that are important in a city like San Francisco, to start looking into a design that will introduce people back into the workplace. We'll be right back.
Recording stopped.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services, including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing, and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
The toughest part in the lending process is patience. Like I tell all my clients, once you get those keys in hand, it'll all be worth it.
Everything that they said they were going to do, they did. I saved so much money working with First Lending Solutions. I love my new house. I couldn't be happier.
So reach out to me at First Lending Solutions so I can help you get started.
You can contact Defina Miller with First Lending Solutions at 951-973-0123, definamillermortgage.com.
I love how new school is able to help me greatly with my career.
Because they actually have experience working in the field. The greatest thing about new school is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. And I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
Recording in progress.
Welcome back, folks. I am your host for Real Men of Real Estate, and I am here discussing with you or sharing some important and vital information on commercial real estate, specifically in the city by the Bay, San Francisco. Our last segment, we mentioned, or I was talking about, move to right sizing changes commercial real estate landscape in San Francisco. And this is important. We did discuss that there's going to be it's crucial that companies start to pivot in this, start to look at a hybrid, and yet too, aside from the office space that needs to be designed to have a little bit more flex space, that also outside you need to have a little bit of nightlife, a little bit of more restaurant open space, and emergency resources. I also wanted to mention something about the topic of commercial real estate that I forgot to mention on the first segment, but I think it's worthy of mentioning it now. If any real estate broker is really concerned about the future of real estate, one only has to look at the big players. And I took this article from an international paper. It's La Nación of Argentina. What I like about looking outside of the United States sometimes, and most of the time, is you have a more broader look on what's happening across the global market. Because if you think about it, big companies are global. In this article, it mentions something very important, and it was just taken from March 7th of this year, 2022. And it mentioned companies of the like of Google, Amazon, Zara, which is a Spanish company. These companies are looking into buying up or leasing up a lot of commercial buildings around the world. This has to open up the eyes of people, especially in the commercial real estate arena. Why are they doing this? Well, you could see that it's almost like, wow, wait a minute. In the pandemic, they were getting out of these spaces, putting their workers in remote places, and trying to work out the situation as best they can, and they were making record, say quarterly record in their amounts of money that in their profits, I should say. So why are companies now, the same ones that were putting their workers remotely to get things done, why are they now looking at, these commercial buildings and spaces? Well, simply put, if you think about it, good investors are always going to invest in something that's needed in a city, especially if the prices are lower than what's usual. Always good to be an investor to always buy at a lower rate than market rate, and yet you see that it appreciates quickly. So this is something that we should keep in mind, and all our listeners, I invite you, do the research. If you even wanted to look at this article, once again, La Nación of Argentina, the 7th of March, 2022, and it highlights these big companies that are buying up and leasing these spaces, Facebook, Apple, Twitter, all these companies from places like Dallas, Detroit, Denver, New York, Phoenix, San Diego. What's nice about San Francisco, that it's so close to Silicon Valley, that they'll always be in connection with the tech company. And yeah, we even see that there are tech companies there that really didn't move, and they're still there in the downtown area. Well, let me go on to the third topic of discussion. I just wanted to share that with you. The third topic of discussion that we are going to talk about now is, will employers change your salary if you move to a cheaper area? This was something that I stumbled upon. Now look at this. This is something that is very, very curious, because there are people that are saying, well, if I had the choice to go downtown or to an urban setting, downtown setting, or I could work at home, I'm going to pick at home. Quite frankly, I could move anywhere in the nation or anywhere in the world and still take care of business and make a nice living. Well, I think employers, companies are starting to really see that, what's going to entice workers back to these urban areas if they're really not differentiating a salary change from a worker that wants to move to, I don't know, let's say some, middle America state, and get them away from the coastal towns, and they're still earning the same amount of money as people that are going into these urban areas. So this was something that was very intriguing as far as the information that I was getting. And one, I'll just say this, from this article, it said that, it said here that Matt Abbott, general manager of the Sorcery, a Bay Area recruiting firm for tech startups, said he's starting to hear that some candidates don't want to budge on their salary, regardless of where they live. Abbott said one client of theirs offered a candidate from Oklahoma a salary in the 150,000 range, while the role would pay around 225,000 to 230,000 in San Francisco. The candidate turned it down, telling the prospective employer that you are hiring for my skill, not for where I live. So there's going to be some negotiating pushback, because this worker, professional, had a point there, right? But yeah, too, it's getting that fine balance. How are companies going to try to get their professionals back into a setting where they can be in a more professional urban setting, and yet not so much enticed, but yet let them know that they will be recompensed for coming there. Well, this was something, it goes on further to say that that's just one very specific story that kind of shook a client of ours. We're hearing this more and more, where people are getting savvy right now because the unemployment rate for engineering talent is so minuscule. So people are getting more savvy, and they may not push for the high end, but what we're hearing is they're not taking the low end neither, right? So, but Abbott said that the number of candidates he's observed who are moving to or are based in these lower cost areas is still very small. Well, I think one thing could be said, that people now, out of these 2 years that we've been quarantined, people do want to get out. And I think it goes back to post-COVID design. I think that where companies, now this is just my personal professional opinion, I think the more that people, companies, architects, designers, investors, brokers, people that are in the thick of real estate, if they could start to see really what is it that this generation is wanting, what is it that companies need of these workers, and see how they can really, really fine tune their offers. This is really what's going to have to be done here. And I think companies are already doing that. We're seeing that there is a movement across the United States that workers do want to be taken seriously. They want to be taken care of, and not to see just, that big companies are always, getting the better deal out of people. So if there's something that I could say as a real estate professional, is that the bottom line people will rent space that is in tune with what's needed at any given time. And so now we're seeing that people do want a space that they're going to feel safe. They're going to be paid for working there, and two, that they're going to be around their colleagues, but also hybrid in the sense that they can, when they can, to leave and take care of their personal business with their families. Now, this is very, very important that if these companies want to attract, say, high-end level workers, we have to pivot quickly. Well, that's about it with this segment. And once again, taken from these sources, I think it is worth reading. And it mentioned that the survey consisted of 349 companies across industries that include finance, insurance, real estate, energy, and utilities, technology, and healthcare. So very, very much worth reading. And once again, this is taken from the marketplace. And so that is it. We are going to break for commercial. Stay tuned.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing, and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
The toughest part in the lending process is patience. Like I tell all my clients, once you get those keys in hand, it'll all be worth it.
Everything that they said they were going to do, they did. I saved so much money working with First Lending Solutions. I love my new house. I couldn't be happier.
So reach out to me at First Lending Solutions so I can help you get started.
You can contact Defina Miller with First Lending Solutions at 951-973-0123, definamillermortgage.com.
I love how New School is able to help me greatly with my career.
Because they actually have experience working in the field. The greatest thing about New School is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. And I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
Welcome back, everyone. I am your host, Paul Matamoros, for Real Men of Real Estate, and I hope that you're enjoying these few segments. It's something so important for us as real estate professionals to really do the research and what's happening today. This is important. I need to ask any professional that's listening to this, or even just a regular person that is interested in knowing about the real estate market these days. When it comes to inflation, we've always heard that tangible real estate has always been a hedge for inflation. The thing that we have going for ourselves with the Fed is that they've seen certain inflation problems in the past, so that they have certain tools to help that with that. But that's why it's important for us to feel secure, any real estate investor, that commercial real estate has always been a good hedge in inflation. So just wanted to put that out there. Well, as we discussed on the last segment, will employers change your salary if you move to a cheaper area? You know, I think the debate is still out there. Do stay tuned and keep your ear open to hearing what happens. But I think that both sides really do have some really good points that they could argue. And that's why it's so important for anyone that owns real estate, anyone that wants to be involved in real estate as far as commercial real estate, really has to start pivoting and start doing things smart as far as a post-COVID design. Well, very well. And there are, and once again, too, with commercial real estate, there's so much that you could do. If one was to get anything from this radio show today, if you really want to be part of the legacy of having invested in commercial real estate that has been a great source of real estate or return on your investment for many, many investors throughout, say, many generations, start to look at the space as a space where people are going to feel comfortable to work. I did a study about 4 years ago that they said that the innovative, say, prototype is anywhere from about 3 to 5 stories high. South of Market, that's what a lot of the projects were, a lot of the properties were. That's where the high tech really took to heart with that and ran with it. And you could see how that's true. But in high-rise buildings, innovation really wasn't conducive to that, because you're in high-rise buildings. Once you get to a certain floor, you stay there. But start to look at it this way. If I'm going to be in a building on a floor, could be the 40th floor, the 60th floor, whatever, the 30th, 20th, how am I going to make my floor be more, say, safer, user-friendly, more fresh in the sense where human meets nature? Start to think of it that way. And of course, that's what we're thinking as far as what we're promoting. But this is really what's going to, say, shift, say, the thought in having workers, having professionals look at those spots. Because let's face it, who doesn't like an area where you have more openness, you're not so inclined to being in one certain area, you're free to roam, plus the perk of if I don't have to come in one day out of the week or two to take care of my personal problems and still get work done, well, that's great. It's coming to that happy medium, right? Where you'll start to see a city, an urban area start to thrive. Because why? They're pivoting quickly to the need of their people, their professionals. You have to understand that in an urban setting, there's a reason why anywhere in the world where you have these downtowns or these urban areas, there's a reason why they're so condensed. Well, you get more done that way. You get more people in that area. If you wanted to go talk to, say, a colleague that's down the street or something like that, you're right there. But if you think about it, if we tend to not pivot quickly and let these areas fall to not being maintained or moving with that, before you know it, the cost to renovate and reconstruct or to remodel to fit a need is going to be that much more expensive. And people really want to be in an area where they could be productive. The other thing I must say about commercial real estate, why I am such a proponent to that, not only because my mom worked for the Transamerica real estate company, the Pyramid, the iconic Pyramid building, and retired from that company. And it made a huge impact in my life as a young boy. But it just, to me, where you see life condensed in areas of cities, this is such a beautiful feeling where you feel that energy. And so I'm a proponent for that. I know there's some people that say, you can have the city. I love living in the country, and that's fine. That's great. But what we're talking here is the productive component of a city, your workers. Okay, well, the other thing I wanted to discuss too, that start to look at these resources that I mentioned and start to see that these big companies really are moving into big companies like Google, Amazon are really looking at these spaces, and it behooves them to look at these spaces because why? The prices are great right now. So any savvy person knows that it's very, very important to move into something when the price is right. Well, I think that we're winding down now our segment here. And once again, my name is Paul Matamoros. I am your host. It is such a privilege to share what I view as something so important in my life, the real estate industry, both commercial and residential. And this platform here of Real Men of Real Estate is such a great platform to share with the public, viewers and listeners, what you can learn about both commercial and residential real estate. Once again, it is my privilege as your host, Paul Matamoros of Real Men of Real Estate, to share this and so you can learn something. I hope you did. Companies, my company, Metro Properties Holding Company, and DBA Envisage Real Estate Inc. in San Francisco, and also doing business as Coldwell Banker Commercial, a real estate broker in the city of Rio Rancho, New Mexico. It is my privilege to be with you and share these little nuggets. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing, and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.